Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CoSM Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler James Berger. This episode is the first of the ARTheology series, where we explore subjects of art, spirit, and consciousness with Alex Gray. In this interview, we discuss angels. How do they appear in the visionary mystical experience, and how have they been represented in different religious traditions throughout the world? We explore all that and more in this episode, so without any further ado, please welcome Alex Gray. So, Alex, throughout history, many religious traditions have represented messenger beings in their mythologies that we in the West refer to as angels. This type of being is not only reserved to fantasies and stories. Research into psychedelic substances show us that experiences of supernatural entities that exist somewhere between divinity and humanity is a very real experience that many have had. So, what is your definition of angel, and how have you experienced them in your own life?
Well, I used to be very cynical about the subject, actually, before I encountered some, and this, I think, is a really interesting territory where creative people. That's really everybody, but I've heard a lot of painters and musicians and things like that talk about receiving something from what they felt to be a higher, wiser presence that sometimes in the psychedelic states, I have seen beings. Like my first ayahuasca journey, 2001, out in the jungle outside of Manaus, and a being whose head was probably about this large, I don't know, 18 inches or so, and it came before me in my psychedelic, state, and I could see it had humanoid features, or I was giving it, if this is some kind of plasmic, interactive mind substance that you're working with. Who knows what the imagination is, really, but it felt like there was a being that, I was not expecting to come, and there it was, suddenly like looking in a window that you were right next to the window in a cafe or something, and somebody comes right up to the window to look at you, to know that, are you seeing me? Because I'm seeing you. Are you seeing me? And until I could really acknowledge its presence and, say thank you, and like it's amazing to see you, and thank you for this vision. It had like jewel-like that were slowly kind of drifting over its face. Jewel-like forms. There were geometries and things of all different kind of world cultures that would weave down through it. It maintained a kind of presence there, but other like tattoos of a variety of cultures and surfaces would pass over its face, and so and then it departed after it, and it was very benign, positive, and seemed to just want to reassure me that the beings are there, and they are also seeking relationship as we intelligently interact with and pay respect to their presence. and to their possibilities for helping us to both align with this higher power that they're the servants of and messengers of. And because I think that they're very important in the spiritual path and process. And they kind of are probably accompanying us like spiritual parents along our life journey. Sometimes they help get us out of trouble. Sometimes you may, like only attribute, oh my God, I just nearly died, but something saved me and pulled me back. I don't know what, So we may be unconscious of their interactions with us. It may be multiple strings, but we feel like if they're serving a higher power, then they tilt us toward a more moral or ethical relationship with the social web and with ourselves, to treat ourselves better and to treat others better and to be generous in those ways, because they come from an energy of abundance, the endless, infinite creative energy, that they're the representatives, the beings that are able to empower us with they're a vessel of this, and the more vessel-like we become, and like we become emissaries like they are to this higher power. And so there's a theurgy. They call this relationship with the angelic beings theurgy, and so prayer can address them, and you can summon them in some ways. There are other kind of classes and different strata of beings, from those who have just departed, the souls of the departed. We may hear word from our parents, who might have passed on. I've heard from my parents, and at different times, that they keep an eye on us. They're sometimes known to greet us at our own death. So there's a spiritual world and spiritual bodies that perhaps the past or departed souls reside in for a while. They might link back up with those that were near and dear to them, and find and have some kind of reckoning or some kind of reconciliation, and be able to move on and move through things that they couldn't work out in the material world and things. And so, and then they also, depending on who they are, they might get a job. That they might, God might need Sector 8, to be covered with a certain kind of intelligence. That karmically you've bound many lifetimes of intelligence into your spiritual body, which is accessible as an angelic or departed soul. So then you can become part of and work with the angelic forces that may need some folks in the foxholes. You're not going to die again. You're a spiritual force that's there to help.
Yeah.
And then I think there's ascending levels of those kinds of beings. But there are beings that like Padmasambhava, are spiritual teachers that are accessible if you say the right mantras and things like that. Then you invoke them and have and carry on a relationship with them and receive teachings or words of wisdom and guidance from them.
So angels are kind of like these spiritual puppeteers that can kind of exert, maybe pull some strings onto this realm.
I maybe, like you were saying, like being able to pull our foot back from traffic that we didn't see or something. In that way, maybe so, or organizing the coincidences to, kind of converge in some breakthrough insight that we have, or things like this. In that way, they remain in the backgrounds and pretty undetectable in a way. And whether they're there or not, if you start talking about that kind of subject, maybe it's okay on the CoSM Podcast, but you better watch who you talk to about these kinds of things too, because they're still regarded as symptom of madness. If you start talking about, I heard voices and they were telling me this and that, and so and not all the voices are nice either. So when we hear voices that not only are there angels, but there's probably more like demonic spirits that we associate with that realm as well, that we might leave ourselves open to, and we might, go into realms of despair and hell realms and things like that because of this kind of constant drone of a very negative kind of thought pattern as well, which could be, you could liken it to a demonic presence, whether it really is or not, because it's acting like one, a negative thought pattern that you've generated yourself, So you can give power to it by continuing it and things. So, but by observing it, maybe even making a drawing of it, or transforming it in some way.
Now many artistic representations, at least in the West, of angels include, maybe in their most cartoonish distillations, include three main features, and that is the halo, wings, and luminosity. They're often made of light. Can you explain a little bit the symbolic significance behind these three features?
I think that's a great subject, Tyler, because it really ties into visionary art, I think, because that's at least two of the subjects of visionary art, which would be the light body, the halo, or the luminosity of the being is the sense that we're all light beings. And certainly when a being has dropped the body, a spiritual essence has dropped the body, they are the light. And they have a subtle body, a spiritual body. It's still a form, but it's more of a plasmic light form, an astral light form, an etheric light form. So these levels of luminosity, like the atmosphere around the earth, have a presence and have a texture and have a way to hold the substance, the spiritual substance of the identity of this being. And so this the luminosity, or the light body, is certainly one of the subjects. The other subject is the subject of the Therian morph, the animal-human hybrid kind of thing. So if we see the angel with bird's wings, then we associate it with a higher world. It raises up. It transcends. It's a vertical or rising being. So heaven has always been heaven, up high and in the sky, in the spiritual sky, in the sun, the light. So all of those things in the upraised kind of world symbolically would lead one to this sense of the flight of the soul, and that is symbolized by the bird. And so the bird is the closest thing, besides the butterfly, that we have to that. But both have wings, and both have these. So the kinds of wings and things that we see also in the depictions of angels in the West and in the East have rainbow presences as well. So like the luminosity, the light body thing, you see oftentimes the rainbow feathers and things like that, like peacock kind of thing.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about how this kind of being is represented in other religious mythologies?
I think that the Dakinis and the Devas in the Tibetan Buddhist religion or practices, they work with classes of beings, and they have a very elaborate hierarchy of dakinis and devas and spiritual beings that are all kind of forming like layers of spiritual ecology, woven webs around. They see the like a lot of the shamanic systems. There are plant spirits that are related to certain plants. There are animal spirits. There are spirits of place. The woods and things like that. There's particular characters of areas of water and things like that. That there will be a spirit that inhabits that area of the land and things like that.
In Shintoism, you see that a lot.
Exactly. So that sometimes when you come upon a home or a house or a property or even a rock, it can have a whoa, what went on here, man? There's a lot of either a beautiful view or just something extraordinary about the placement of elements, in Shintoism or Taoist kind of art. You see the kind of relationships of the land that have this special character. And so the characters of places often become symbolized in spirits.
Personified.
Exactly. And so those presences they see as hovering around, but they are also kind of governed within this greater hierarchy and system of a community type angel, and then even a state angel and a national angel and things like this. They have like hierarchies.
Why the
spiritual
hierarchies?
Beings. I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
But I look at nature. It's why hierarchies, it works.
Yeah.
It's like you got atoms, then you got molecules, then you
Yeah.
got cells, then you got tissue, then you got community, then you got, so they're all enveloping hierarchies. That's the way that's the way God works.
Yeah, yet it's all part of the same triangle,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Now, moralistically, it's not like that. People try to make well, therefore, this race is better than another. That's wrong. We're all one humanity, and so and speciesism and things like that. We have to see ourselves in the entire web, as and that there is a spiritual, intelligent web. All the shamanic cultures tell us this, that hey, you materialistic people who are no longer listening to nature, you're not hearing the cries of angels that are telling you to stop cutting the forest, stop polluting the air. There's angels everywhere that are being hurt, and they're trying to make their message clear. And a lot of medicine-taking people are hearing those messages.
Yeah, and this hierarchy, maybe it's less of a triangle and more of a circle.
Absolutely.
A web.
Absolutely.
Now, I have certainly had people in my life who feel as if they are angels, as I'm sure you have too. So in what capacity do you believe a human being can be an angel?
I think that there are so many human being angel connectors, I think. But I think that the angels obviously work with certain beings that they choose to work with, and maybe they're, this person is good for this, mission and things like that, and they're willing to work with this force, whether they know it or not. It's just their creative spirit, and so I think that I certainly have felt very similar, and certainly about practically everyone here at CoSM, that they feel to me like an angel who's been brought here, who's been called here. And so it's, I feel extremely lucky about that. And I feel angels called me here as well, and that we're all basically working with a hopefully, in the way that I first saw the vision, there were angels associated with this area, you know, and with this vision of what we're trying to do and stuff. And so sometimes it's more obvious than other times. Sometimes it comes in the form of a person and something they say, a breakthrough kind of insight, you know, that might be the kind of like, you know, from the, hey, I just heard blah, 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 you know, like, oh, hey, thank you, I've been looking for that, you know, or somebody will sit down next to you that is a person who's going to be building with you for the next few years or something, you know, it's just like coincidences are a little bit more managed sometimes within, when you seem to be in a positive or angelically ridden zone.
Well, what do you think is the relationship between angels and synchronicity? It seems like synchronicity is almost like how they kind of...
It's like the language of angels.
It's like the language of angels.
You know? It's like, are you paying attention? How about this number? Boink! You know, it's like, oh, I keep seeing this number, you know, or, you know, the symbol keeps recurring until they, you know, it's like, it's as loud as we can shout. We set it up in the world so that your mind will, you know, make sense out of it, you know, and
it's just up to us to see that.
It is. It's kind of, how do you interpret reality? Do you interpret that it has a spiritual meaning and that it is a dream that is unfolding before you for your edification? You know, it's like there's always an opportunity to learn and to become more knowledgeable and maybe integrate an insight that you didn't have and that was a blind spot. I think that that's what's happening with a lot of people now. They're really looking at themselves and seeing where the blind spots have been, hopefully reckoning with it and starting to integrate a new way of seeing things.
Now, what is maybe a takeaway or a piece of advice you can give people in terms of working with these forces that present themselves to us? How do we go about building a relationship with what we might call angels?
Right. I think that first of all, it's a kind of recognition of the possibility that there may be intelligences out there trying to help us, you know, and even the imagining of that sets up a positive possibility for our imagining, you know, like, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, you know. You have an expectation of a positive outcome. With the expectation of a positive outcome, you call it into being. And so that's part of what angels are paying attention to. Are you stuck in the war with yourself? You know, are you still polluting yourself? Are you hurting yourself? Are you distracted with something that will pull you away at a critical time? We're looking for allies, the angels might say, but we don't want, you know, to put serious time into a non-serious recruit. And so they demand, you know, respect. And eventually, if you say that you want to start working with them, then you better be open to scrutiny, you know, because they have your Google search history, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, I've seen you, I've heard you say before, you're always sketching and drawing and staying creative so the angels know that you'll kind of bring into form any kind of messages they give you. So maybe...
I felt like if you pay attention to what you think are the utterings of angels, and you write them down, or you get a vision and you say, okay, wait a minute, I've got to write something about that thing before it disappears, because they come and go just like that. You know, it's like they're in and out. So when they come, you just got to act fast, you know.
And when you do that, you're showing them that you
respect. I heard you.
Gifts.
I heard that.
You. Yeah.
I got that. You know. Thank you. Wow, amazing. You know, like, whoa, I'll try to do something with that. You know, and then if you do, then it's like maybe next time hey, give them the big thing, you know?
Yeah. Cool. Well, Alex, thank you so much for exploring this subject with us today.
Hey, thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you again for listening to the CoSM Podcast. To stay up to date on any future podcasts or virtual events, please be sure to follow Chapel of Sacred Mirrors on Instagram and Facebook, and to subscribe on all major platforms. And thank you to everyone who has donated during this time. Every donation is a stand for the future of CoSM and allows us to continue to bring inspiring and uplifting content like this to our community. And thank you to Smile High for the soundtrack to this podcast. You can find him by going to the links in the description to this video.